and welcome to today's edition of Velocity Kinetics. Today we are talking about the Bottas battle, a battle for Bottas. Basically, there's going to be a lot of B's in this. Basically, Bottas is back at Mercedes. Haha, a bit of alliteration. Basically, here at Velocity Kinetics, we quite like Valtteri Bottas. Sarah is quite a big fan of Valtteri Bottas. We quite like how hard he races, but how, at least for the cameras, he seems a genuinely nice guy. Not that he isn't a nice guy behind the cameras, but obviously we'll never know what he's like when the cameras aren't rolling, or indeed when he's not doing anything with Mercedes. However, recently there's been a bit of discussion about what is going to happen to him, and it's annoyed me quite a bit. Valtteri is often listed as just being a number 2 driver. That's all he's good for. And a lot of places talk about it, the race, WTF1, a lot of people in the F1 community. The F1 community itself is actually pretty shitty in general, but they all don't seem to come very much to his defence and keep saying he should be out of the Merc. But at the same time, you've got to wonder just what it's like for him to race in Mercedes. The big issue Valtteri will always have, at least in his time at Mercedes, is he has been racing against one of the sport's greatest of all time. Certainly statistically, he is, at least for the time being, and probably for a significant amount of time to come, or to go, is the greatest of all time. You've got to be something pretty special to topple the greatest. As things are, Valtteri quite often finishes behind Lewis. He is quite often subject to team orders, or at least it seems he seems quite often subject to team orders, and a lot of the current speculation about Valtteri has come about from George Russell stepping in to the Merc last weekend. I wish I could have seen it, because some of the racing George was doing looked fantastic, and don't get me wrong, I think there's not a person around who would begrudge George that success, going from the worst car on the grid to the best car, and George has proven he is undoubtedly a good future shot, not just for Mercedes but for any team. And if Williams can miraculously improve, then they've got a strong driver, and they've got confidence and confirmation that he is getting everything he possibly can out of the Williams. But since then, it's caused a lot of speculation about Valtteri's future. Supposedly, Valtteri has no longer got on his Instagram profile that he's part of Mercedes F1. And likewise, George has no longer got part on his that he is part of Williams. Now, this could be a delay, it could be company policy, it could be F1 policy. It could just be people stirring the pot for no reason. What does my head in is people don't seem to realise the mental fortitude you need to go out every week to race against someone you know you are probably going to lose against, or that there's a good chance that you're going to lose against, and then you've got people calling your seat into question all the time. You saw it the other year when Valtteri's seat hadn't been sorted, and how his performances dropped off because naturally that stuff would have gotten to him. Then when the seat was announced that it was his performances picked up again. Valtteri at the moment is contracted for 2021 to Mercedes. George is currently contracted to Williams for 2021. What does this mean? Well, nothing really, because contracts in F1 mean jack shit. Contracts are undone, paid off, you name it. Williams could easily say, you can have George for next year, Mercedes, but we want 3 engines for the entire year. And Mercedes would probably agree, if they want George that much. We'll never know what it's been like for Valtteri inside the Mercedes team unless he ever writes an autobiography that tells all about what it's like. Even then, that'll only be Valtteri's perspective. If Lewis writes about autobiography, we'll get his perspective on what it was, but that's all it'll be, a perspective. They're 2 rivals and they want the best out of the car. Now, don't get me wrong, Valtteri is an immense driver in my opinion. I see him as a future Mika Hakkinen myself. Granted, time's not on his side, and the number of spaces available on the grid are not on his side. And at the moment, he's pretty much his only get his only chance to race would potentially be in a Red Bull if they went outside the program. But would he really want to go to be somewhere to be a de facto number 2, or maybe to somewhere like Haas, boot Mazepin out or something like that? But or even the SAT car, because technically there's a seat there, but it's Tsunoda's meant to be getting that seat. But Valtteri, I would say, compared to just about any other driver in Formula 1, has had more speculation dumped at his feet than anyone I can think of. The only person who can really ever level with what it was like, or what it's like for Valtteri, well, actually there's two people who could probably vouch for it that I can think of. But primarily, there's only one, and that's Rubens Barrichello. Because Rubens was at Ferrari during Schumann's period of dominance, and Bottas finds himself at Mercedes during Hamilton's period of dominance. The only other driver who could possibly understand it might be David Coulthard, and being talked about as a straight up as a number 2 in his contract, which is not what he particularly wanted. Valtteri did some amazing things in the Williams when he was there, and he had a brilliant tutor in the form of Massa. Granted, Massa was not quite the driver he once was after he sustained that incident in Hungary in 2009, but nonetheless, they both pulled brilliant performances out of the Williams. So Valtteri has talent. How much Valtteri is subject to team orders, we don't know. How much Valtteri is just not able to get on top of the car, we don't know. He's obviously able to get on top of it enough to qualify in the positions he has been. But I have to say, I am fed up of people just writing Valtteri off. Just writing him off with no thought. The only way I can liken what Valtteri must be up against, and indeed what Rubinho would have been up against as well, and I can draw on some of my own experience from this as well, not as in motor racing. I wish motor racing. I wish, but probably not. If you've ever gone for a job progression, so if you're looking to go from normal staff to supervisor to manager, manager to area manager, you name it. If you find yourself in the same position as someone else quite frequently, but the other person gets the job before you, that is disheartening beyond belief. It's bad enough and annoying and disheartening enough when it happens once. When it happens frequently, there's not a lot you can do about it, admittedly, but when it happens a lot, it really gets something inside. For example, when I worked at Santander, and I left in November 2018, prior to my leaving, I can't remember exactly how many months before leaving, but during my time, before I left, I'd worked my way up to be a specialist. Now, admittedly, I got to be a seconded specialist on my first attempt at going for a specialist job. But then that was it, I was just stuck seconded. They had permanent selections, I think it was 2 or 3 times. Don't think it was as many as 4. I think it was 3 times they did it, and each time I was not selected, even though I'd outworked my colleagues, well, at least from my perspective. I had outworked them, I'd taken more calls, my call time was far better, my specialist rating was higher, I'd worked myself on extra projects, I'd taken on extra work, I'd at one point worked myself to the point of a breakdown and was off sick for quite a long period of time, had quite severe mental health problems because of all the extra work, and didn't get made permanent. There was one selection, I remember that me and a friend, she's a lovely lady, she and I were the best bet for getting the job. They said, if you don't get it, then you isn't me, so if I didn't get it, she would have got it. That's what everyone thought. And then someone came completely in from left field and did it. It pissed a lot of people off that person got the job, especially when you saw all the extra work that she wasn't taking on this person who the job was between and me. While she hadn't taken on as much extra work as me, she was nonetheless taking on quite a bit extra, and we're both very high performing on our teams, but didn't get the job. And the amount of anger I still have towards that, and like I said, I left that company I left in November 2018, so over 2 years, and the amount of anger I still have towards what happened shows how much I cared. That is essentially what Valtteri is up against. He's constantly doing his best, he's doing everything he possibly can and not getting it. So of course it's going to affect his performance on track. I just wish people would stop speculating about his seat. He is a good driver. If he wasn't good, he wouldn't be there. Toto Wolff would not have paid any attention to him. If he wasn't that good, he wouldn't have got the Williams into the positions he did when he was at Williams. The fact he put an FW35 on pole because he got the timing right of when to go out for the qualifying lap in Montreal, that says a lot about Valtteri. And yet people are ready just to crap all over him. I just wish... the F1 community is, like I said, it's awful on social media. It is by far and away one of the worst communities to watch, because social media gives everyone a platform. They think that they're entitled to their opinion, and because they're allowed to put their opinion on there, that's the only opinion. Everyone has to listen to it. If you want a good example of how to deal with opinions on social media or YouTube, subscribe, particularly if you like Steam Train, subscribe to Chris Eden Green's channel, because he deals with things in such a balanced way, and I try to do things the same way where I can. I appreciate driver preference is always going to be a tough subject. Some people will like one driver more than another, some will never see your viewpoint. But I just wish people would stop berating Valtteri in the way he currently is. Albon isn't quite subject to the same level of berating. Raikkonen was never subject to the same level of berating. DC wasn't. Rubens wasn't. Why Valtteri? And Valtteri, if you ever watch this video, please get in contact. Just send us a message. We do love you loads on this channel. Please don't stop being you, Mr. Bottas. And everyone else on our channel, we will see you in the next one.